I think we will get started. Thank you all for joining. This session is called Cyberspace is the New Battlefield. Are you prepared with Microsoft's Advanced Threat Protection? So this is the second session in our three-part webinar series, kind of going through organizational security and how it aligns with Microsoft's threat protection products. This session, we're going to delve into Microsoft's Advanced Threat Protection Stack, talk about what it means for your organization and how you, as a customer and client, can achieve a much more secure security posture by leveraging these Microsoft technologies. So I'm Chris Stelzer. I'm a senior consultant here at Softlanding. I've been contracted by Microsoft to do a number of these sessions. I do webinar sessions. I do tech summit presentations. I have some advanced security workshops, like full one-day workshops covering this stuff coming up in a bunch of cities across Canada. So I'll post the links to those sessions. If anybody wants to sign up and come attend, you are more than welcome to. So, cybersecurity landscape is drastically and rapidly changing. We're seeing attacks on lots of clients and organizations. It's no longer attacks on governments and attacks on large enterprises. Attacks are taking place on small businesses at an increasing scale. We're seeing attacks against private property, the mobile devices we carry around, the laptops on our desks, even public infrastructure. I have some cool examples of, I wouldn't say cool, but there's some recent malware that got leaked that its sole purpose was to disable safety systems on industrial control plants. Like, this is malware destined for destruction. And there is some serious concerns with public safety in regards to some of these threats. What started as a decade and a half ago as a sense that there were just some teenagers in a basement, hacking their way, has moved well beyond that. And it's morphed into, these sophisticated international organized crime and worse, sophisticated nation-state attacks against government and organizations. It's a very serious and real threat we have to deal with. Personnel and resources are limited. There is a huge job shortage in the IT security space. In IT space in general, within Canada, there's an absolutely massive job shortage. Microsoft is so aware of this. I just read an article yesterday that the state of Washington is looking to increase business tax for Amazon and Microsoft by up to 63% in order to properly fund educational grants and programs. Microsoft is so on board with this that they have jumped in with both feet. Amazon, not so much. They're against it. But you can imagine when an organization is willing to up their business taxes by 62%, they really realize that there is a massive shortage in the security skills that are required to help support organizations. And also the number of connected devices in 2018 is predicted to top 11 billion. Not including computers and phones. Virtually everything is connected. How many devices do you have? I've seen people with 3, 4, 5 devices in their pockets. There's a substantial number of devices that everybody has, and they're all endpoints that are ripe for attack. I mean, we see attacks on ATMs. There's attacks on routers. I mean, we've all seen this taking place in the wild. Virtually anything can be attacked, and we need a way to help protect those. So again, the digital estate is growing, and when it comes to defending cyber attacks, we have to consider what that means. How do we think about what our assets are and what we have to defend against? This is quite a bit different than it was from 5 or 10 years ago. We used to be able to just put up some firewalls and put up a perimeter around our org, and things were all fine. No issues there. But now that's not the case. Things like user-owned mobile devices that access corporate data, devices like laptops and surfaces. These are devices that live anywhere. It also includes systems and devices that your partners and customers use to access your information. Any one of these points can be a vulnerability to your overall estate. That changes the game when it comes to security. You can't just draw a perimeter around your organization. So this is a challenge we all struggle with, and it's a challenge we definitely need to overcome. So this challenge of securing your environment, again, Microsoft has a strong relationships with its customers, and they've had many conversations with them. So they pay close attention to the industry and have a better understanding of what customers' needs are. We just make sure people are muted. There's some background noise there. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. So the threat landscape is continually growing in both volume and sophistication. There's consistent evolution of threats. As such, it's imperative that we have solutions in place that can evolve quickly. We can't rely on static antivirus definitions to keep us protected anymore. We need more dynamic and evolving technology to help deal with these threats. Digital technology simplified our lives. It's made us more productive. It's also opened up new avenues for attack. This digital estate is broad and growing, and so is that attack surface. Having solutions in place that can address this breadth of attack is paramount to keeping our organization secure. Finally, there's another challenge facing both customers and Microsoft is the sheer volume of threats that we see. Threat signals are basically just noise when we look at firewall logs and Azure AD security logs. All of this information is trillions and trillions of signals. How do we go decipher that information to make use and understand, make sense of it within your organization? So we need a much more integrated and intelligent approach to determining where these threats reside. So the centerpiece of Microsoft's investment is around this, what's called the Intelligent Security Graph. This is how Microsoft describes the way that they synthesize this vast amount of data that comes through from a huge variety of sources. When you look at the quantity of data that Microsoft has access to, that all of these threat signals are sort of based against, we're looking at 400 billion emails from Outlook, Office 365 as well. We have 1.2 billion devices that get scanned every month by Windows Defender. There's some background noise. Can we make sure everybody is muted there? I'm just having trouble muting people through the session. So 1.2 billion devices get scanned every month by Windows Defender. Think of all of the Windows devices that are out there. All of those devices are reporting telemetry data to Microsoft that they can use in order to help determine whether or not attacks are taking place. Think of commercial services like Outlook.com and Xbox Live and Azure. All of those services, Microsoft gathers a tremendous amount of data from. Microsoft is employed by 90% of Fortune 500 companies, and all of those devices and organizations are submitting data that can be used to analyze. Yes, we can hear you. Any questions?
Hi, quickly. My name is Andrew. I'm calling from BCTF. I was trying to join the meeting through the link that you provided, but all it says is someone in the meeting should let you in soon, but it's been like that for almost 15 minutes.
Oh, okay, apologize. Yeah, I don't see anybody in the meeting or the waiting room. Everybody else seems to be in there.
Oh, it says, yeah, I just used the link that they provided. I'm in a browser. It says, hey, Andrew, someone in the meeting should let you in soon. And that's it.
Odd.
I'm not sure if I need to do anything else.
No, you shouldn't have to. Everybody else appears to be in the meeting without issue.
And I'm just calling this number on my cell phone because I'd rather do the web thing.
Yeah.
I didn't see a contact number to call other than this number.
Yeah, odd. What I can do is send you a copy of the slides when we're done. Yeah, I'm not seeing any. I see lots of guests in here. There's other people within the org that have joined without issue.
Okay. Interesting. It shouldn't matter which browser I'm using, right? I'm using Chrome right now.
Nope. Shouldn't matter which browser you're using.
Okay, I'm going to close and see if I can. There was a close button there. I just hit close, and then it took me to a screen where it says rejoin. If I click on that, it says connecting. Same thing. Someone in the meeting will let you in soon.
Okay, just give me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm just going to put everybody on.
Sorry, everybody.
I have someone on the back end looking at see if we can figure out what's going on, but for now you'll just have to do the audio, and we'll send the presentation out when we're finished. But there is other guests invited, and I see them in the room, and they confirm that they can indeed see the presentation. So it's strange.
Okay. I didn't want to hang on myself. I'll see if I can. Okay. I'll see what I can do on my end. Maybe I'll try a different browser or something to see if I can join.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay. Bye.
So again, back on this intelligent security graph, we have things like 750 million plus Azure accounts that give a tremendous insight into how people authenticate. That's 450 billion Azure authentications a month that Microsoft can use to help determine if there's threats. That's a tremendous amount of data that they can look at and say what is normal behavior when it comes to sign-ins and authentications versus what is abnormal behavior. And how often is that someone has the right password, but they're not the person that they say they are. So, they've been learning a lot about defending what's really important. Things like Bing scans like 500 billion, 18 billion web pages every month. So giving them great insight into what people are doing with web scripting and things like that. On top of that, Microsoft layers on shared threat data that comes from other partners, other researchers, other organizations who are part of the 3,500 plus people that make up security within Microsoft at full time. They integrate with law enforcement agencies and other partners, and they have a digital crimes unit that helps, as well as botnet data that they use to collect data as well. So all of that data makes up this intelligent security graph that they use to help provide protection. So the Microsoft Threat Protection Stack is designed around this intelligent security graph. They've built the Microsoft Threat Protection solution using the intelligent security graph as a base. It is a solution that ensures end-to-end security across these different types of threat vectors we're going to talk about. We often talk about attacks coming through the front door, but is there really a front door nowadays? What Microsoft's learned over the last few years around those famous attacks such as WannaCry and NotPetya, these attacks can be launched at any part of an organization. There's no fixed entry point. Therefore, Microsoft Threat Protection is designed to secure your organization across the entire attack surface, which includes things like identities, endpoints, user data, cloud apps, and also infrastructure. All of these things are sort of attack vectors that are dealt with through the Microsoft Threat Protection solution. Identities encompass things like credentials for both admins and end users. Endpoints is the wider range of devices you have, from your phones to your desktops to your laptops. User data encompasses all the emails and documents residing in SharePoint Online and Exchange Online. Also, we have cloud applications and infrastructure as well. Infrastructure being virtual machines, databases, and networks. Microsoft has solutions to protect against all of these different threat vectors within your organization. So if we look at the Microsoft Threat Protection products that make up the total stack, we can look at what they are and how they align to the different products. So identities. Microsoft has integrated solutions within Azure Active Directory like identity protection, privileged identity management, all kinds of identity-based security solutions to protect your identities. Azure ATP is designed to protect against your on-premise domain controller traffic to look for threats. Cloud App Security is also designed to look for threats that reside within cloud apps, anomalous activity from your identities, accessing Office 365 or SharePoint or things like that. Then we have endpoints. Things like Intune can be used in Windows 10 to help secure devices in terms of applying policies and configurations. Windows 10 has a wider range of security features like Credential Guard, Exploit Guard, attack surface reduction rules, all those different things for hardening your endpoints in Windows 10. Windows Defender ATP is an advanced threat protection product that's built into Windows 10. This is not to be confused with the standalone Windows Defender that everybody has. This is an advanced threat protection product that's included in the ATP stack that provides you with next level incident response based on advanced machine learning, monitoring activities on your devices to determine if threats are occurring. Then we move down into user data. We have things like Office 365 ATP to scan emails and phishing and malware, all on the email and data side. Exchange Online Protection doing similar things. Cloud App Security also monitoring content within the cloud for malicious activity, monitoring documents in OneDrive and documents in SharePoint Online. All of that information can be monitored through Cloud App Security. Cloud apps, again, we have Cloud App Security protecting all of the cloud applications that exist, Office 365 ATP, and Exchange Online Protection, protecting all the different cloud apps and SaaS applications you might have within your organization. And then from an infrastructure perspective, we have threat protection products that protect SQL, that protect Linux, and Azure Security Center used to help onboard and monitor both your Azure VMs and your hybrid cloud VMs for on-premise. So all of this threat protection products really helps define and protect against all of these different entry points within your organization. So Microsoft believes that, user education and training is so key. Today, we have to place security to the lowest common denominator. All it takes is one uneducated user to click on a phishing link to possibly cause a breach within your organization. So, protection is only that one layer. As we all know, regardless of what service you use, there's a chance that something is going to get through. And when that happens, we need a true end-to-end enterprise-grade service that must be able to quickly detect when a breach does occur. Additionally, once detected, those best solutions must provide simple and effective response and remediation capabilities. If you have a security tool that tells you that a security event occurred, but it doesn't give you any sort of insight into why or how or what steps you should take to do next, then there's not really a ton of value there. So Microsoft Threat Protection was designed specifically to address all three of these aspects of the threat lifecycle. So Microsoft's heard from customers that the growing focus on end-user education, so there are also features in Microsoft Threat Protection which help customers educate their end users in how to handle threats should they get attacked. There's lots of really, really exciting stuff that we're going to delve into in this particular session. So in most cases, your security is probably made up of several different point-to-point products that are very disjointed, and they really raise the complexity of your environment. So rather than secure your organization. Often this complex, disjointed set of services can cause more problems than it actually solves. So Microsoft's Threat Protection can help replace this major disparate set of products and help unify everything in a solution that secures your modern workplace. I really like this tagline. It really sort of sums up what Microsoft Threat Protection is all about. Optimal security with minimal complexity. I being a security person, I can rely on Microsoft Threat Protection stack by consolidating the number of products we use and by ensuring that these products are intelligent enough to communicate and share information amongst one another. So let's delve into the threat protection capabilities and scenarios to help talk about and sort of communicate the value. So while the Intelligent Security Graph powers Microsoft Threat Protection, it sort of weaves together through these 5 important pillars. So in the remainder of this session, we're going to demonstrate some real-world examples of how these threat protection capabilities align to these foundational pillars. First of all, threat protection from Microsoft enables integration across a wide range of services. This is probably one of the most important pieces because with threats coming in through multiple vectors, if your endpoints aren't connected properly to your email, how are you supposed to trace a threat that maybe comes through email, executes on an endpoint, moves laterally within your network to compromise other accounts? If those disparate products are not sharing and exchanging information, if they're not integrated, it makes it very difficult to trace threats within your organization. So this integration really helps reduce the complexity by surfacing signals, providing control, and allowing access to the entire security footprint. So all of the products and services within the threat protection stack are driven by intelligence. Intelligence is what helps organizations correlate the trillions of threat signals into cohesive and actionable data. So we're going to demonstrate how that intelligence behind the threat protection products helps secure your organization. And automation, it's the key element to help you reduce time and budget on security. Automation will really help allow your organization to spend less time on day-to-day security and focus much more on making your core business functions more efficient. However, perhaps the most important automation leverages the intelligence we just discussed to ensure your better and more robust security for your organization. So automation is key in helping, drive those security threats down, helping remediate them quickly and with less user intervention as possible. So the services that are focused or that are part of Microsoft's threat protection are all focused on helping the user be more productive. Users and identities are key. If we help increase security, which decreases productivity, we're not doing our users a good job. So all of the tools and products are designed to keep your users productive while ensuring they remain secure. Finally, a rich ecosystem of partners is paramount for insecurity. So we need a much larger breadth and depth of threat landscape. Organizations have to work together to help ensure customers remain secure. So we will, at the end, talk about how partnerships are a key aspect of the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph as well. So let's delve into some real-world examples of how these attacks take place and how Microsoft Threat Protection can help protect you. So coming soon and currently in preview is sort of this integration between these core technologies within threat protection. Azure ATP designed to help protect your organization's Active Directory traffic, so on-premise traffic from threats internal within your org. Cloud App Security designed to protect your cloud applications and data within your organizations, as well as Identity Protection designed to protect your identities from connecting through what are called risk events or malicious activity from within Azure Active Directory. We can combine all three of these services to provide a much more cohesive experience when dealing with security. So if we look at an example, customers' environments are becoming way more complex, spanning both cloud and on-prem. You've got on-prem traffic, you've got cloud traffic. All of this becomes very, very difficult to defend against because we no longer just have a front door. So let's walk through what a typical attack might look like and what happens if you don't have a solution in place. So attack starts with threat actors leveraging what are called password spray attacks. These, I guarantee, are happening. If you have Office 365, I guarantee you these are happening as we speak. As we sit in this meeting, people are attempting to get into your Office 365 tenant by using password spray attacks. They use a low and slow method by hitting Office 365 with usernames and passwords, attempting to get in. So they maybe hit one account every 5 minutes to prevent lockouts from occurring. And they have these network of bots. I mean, Microsoft has broadcasted cases where organizations have detected, 30,000 unique IPs hitting their organization. These are massive, sophisticated networks of bots that are absolutely hell-bent on getting into your organization through these types of attacks. And I'll show you some real-world Azure Active Directory traffic from some sample clients that basically showcase that this is taking place. So these attacks take place. All it takes is for one compromised account credential that maybe goes through legacy authentication or doesn't have MFA enabled, and they manage to get into the organization. After that, the attacker begins performing mailbox searches, doing things like that. The attacker then gains access to Office 365 and sets up automated exfiltration of data through things like email and SharePoint. They create journaling rules, inbox forwarding rules to sort of funnel mail and funnel data outside of the organization. Also during this period, the attacker might find things like stolen VPN credentials. Maybe they find credentials that have been sent over email. Now they have access to email. Now they have access to VPN credentials. From that, they can move laterally within the organization. So they get VPN, they connect to VPN. After they connect to VPN, they go through and they gain access to the environment. In this case, the customer didn't find this particular breach for over 200 days. And with an attack which plans both cloud and on-premise environment, these attacks are difficult and hard to navigate. So we need a way to protect against these attacks. So let's delve into this and look a little further. So now with the power of threat protection, we can take action much more quickly in the event that an account is compromised. So here's an example of Azure Identity Protection that's looking at identities. It's looking at accounts that are connecting to Azure, and it's looking for what are called risk events. Now these risk events vary a wide range. So here's some examples of some risk events that Azure Active Directory or Azure Identity Protection is designed to protect against. Things like users with leaked credentials, sign-ins from anonymous IPs, impossible travel, infected devices, IPs with suspicious activity, and sign-ins from unfamiliar locations. So if you're running identity protection, every authentication that happens to Azure is analyzed for these particular threats. Some of them happen immediately when you log in, things like anomalous location, anonymous IP. Others sort of happen on the back end, things like leaked credentials. Leaked credentials will actually monitor a wide variety of sources to determine if there's a particular threat. I'm just going to put people on hold for 1 second. Sorry about that. So yeah, leaked credentials basically looks at, Microsoft is constantly monitoring things like law enforcement, dark web sources, password leak databases, and if they find any of those passwords that have been posted on one of those databases that particularly matches one of your objects or your accounts, then you can go ahead, they can flag that account as being at risk. And once that account is flagged as being at risk, you can take action upon it. You can actually have automated rules in place to automatically block accounts when they're at high risk. So if we delve into this real-world example, we can look at the different risk events that have taken place with a number of identities. So let's look at this Jeff Leatherman one in this particular link. So if we look at Jeff, we can dig into this and we can see a number of different events that have occurred. This particular event that has occurred has listed that person as having leaked credentials. This means that the credentials for that person have been posted somewhere. Microsoft has detected it and it's assumed that that account is now at high risk. So what we can do with this is we can now branch onto different security products to identify if this account has been used within a particular attack. So again, integration is one of the key benefits with threat protection. And this seamless integration with other security capabilities makes the process of securing the organization much easier. So you'll notice within this list, we have this button for Investigate with Azure ATP. We can click that link, which takes us directly to Azure Advanced Threat Protection to delve into these threats in a little more detail. So if we look at these threats in a little more detail, we're now seeing the Azure ATP dashboard specifically for Jeff's account. So this is now showing us all of the on-premise Active Directory traffic and threats that have occurred with Jeff's account. So looking at this particular example, we can see that he has a high risk score, and we see that Azure ATP has calculated an investigation priority. So, if you are part of a SecOps team, maybe you have a number of accounts, hundreds of accounts with possible risk scores based on their permission in Active Directory and other things. It helps to understand which accounts you should look at first. The investigation priority is built not only from the alerts, but also from activities for both cloud and on-prem. So this is actually branched into not only on-premise Active Directory traffic, but it's branched into traffic taking place within the cloud as well through things like cloud app security. So scrolling down, we can see additional alerts. We see the alerts for the leaked account credentials. We see risky sign-ins. Unfamiliar sign-in properties indicates that this user is authenticated from a location that's unknown to the organization. Then we delve into things a little deeper. We see that an attack or an alert coming from Cloud App Security indicating that this object has done some suspicious inbox forwarding. So Cloud App Security is monitoring all of the activity that's taking place within the cloud. It's looking at new journaling rules and inbox forwarding rules and, deletion of objects and modifying of permissions. And it's correlated, this user also has an alert within that other product indicating that there's suspicious inbox forwarding. So this suspicious inbox forwarding actually set up the attacker set up some inbox forwarding rules to sort of forward these messages and exfiltrate data. And in this alert, you can see that it's actually taking place from a Tor IP address, which is indicative of an anonymous IP or some sort of attack. You can see that this was the first time in 15 days the organization found this stuff. Exchange Online was accessed from this particular ISP the first time in 14 days. So it's showing us all these signals in a much easier to understand fashion. So you can take action a lot quickly. You can see recommendations listed below as well, indicating that, considering, implementing an access policy, or, confirm with the user if this activity was legitimate and then resolve the alert if required. So if you go back to the previous window, look at some of the other alerts, like abnormal access to protected documents. This is abnormal access to what are called Azure Information Protection documents that are potentially contain organizational and sensitive information. And it's highlighted that this user has attempted to access those documents as well. So you see this very cool theme of exchanging of information, this integration between the different security products, to provide us with a much more holistic view of what's taking place. Here you can see suspicious VPN connections as well. So Azure ATP can monitor for suspicious VPN connections as well. This is indicating that this is the first indication that the attack has moved from cloud activities back to on-premise activities. So we can see here the suspicious VPN connection taking place from Manila in the Philippines. Jeff normally logs in this case from London, not from Manila. So this would be an indicator that this particular account has been compromised. So let's take a look at another threat to further investigate the breach. So the very first alert indicates that Jeff did some reconnaissance using directory services queries. So this is very common. If an attacker gets in your org, they start querying Active Directory, looking for who's in global admins, who's in domain admins, who's in the administrators group, who's local admin on a workstation or an object. They use PowerShell, they use commandlets, they use command line tools to sort of query this information. Azure ATP can pick up this information from your organization by doing sort of a baseline of Active Directory activity and traffic. It basically monitors Active Directory for things that are taking place and then determines if particular instances are abnormal. So, you come in and you log into one computer every day. All of a sudden, it detects your account has logged into 3 computers it's never seen before. That will generally drive an anomaly that you can help to determine if a threat is taking place. So if we drill into this alert indicating that Jeff's account was doing suspicious SAMR queries to the domain controller, we can see that his account actually was looking for a particular user, Ron Harper, and a group help desk. So this is actually indicating that this person has moved laterally to another user or is attempting to do so. You can actually drill into Ron Harper as an example to see what's happening with Ron's account. So if we drill into Ron's account, we can now see he has high priority alerts. Ron doesn't have an Azure Active Directory risk score, but it appears his account has been compromised, which is why the investigation priority is high. And we see identity theft using pass the ticket attack. So these are attacks where hackers will get on your machine, or attackers, and they will grab tokens or credentials from the credential store, and they will attempt to use those credentials to move laterally to other systems. This is why it's a best practice to never use privileged accounts to log into non-privileged machines like workstations. You should never be using domain admin accounts to log into workstations because you leave those credentials behind. If you're not using things like Credential Guard and all these other tools, you may be subject to attack. So in this case, somebody's token was stolen, or Kerberos Ticket, from this RDP server and used to access a finance server called SharePoint-SRV. So you can clearly see that this attack has moved laterally from one account to the other and also breached a particular SharePoint server. So this indicates that the activity from Ron's account was probably from a bad actor who has taken control over the account. So this information from both cloud and on-premise activities has allowed us to find both compromised users, in this case Jeff and Ron, and see the full scope of the attack in progress. Now, in pass the ticket attacks, the user's credentials are taken, as we described, from a compromised device and used elsewhere. While we're focused on the user account, we also need to remediate the affected devices. So Azure ATP also provides a direct link to branch over to Defender ATP that allows you to protect and secure and provide remediation actions to help sort of remediate these threats as they occur. And we'll show that in a few minutes. So we've seen users' information, and we know that the threat actor also accessed a server. So server protection is key in Microsoft threat protection. We need to be able to protect servers as well, not just identities and workstations. And we can do that by leveraging Microsoft Threat Protection, Defender ATP, as well as Azure Security Center. These are products that help drive alerts and help drive protection against both your Azure workloads as well as your on-premise workloads. So when people think Azure Security Center, they think, well, I don't use Azure VMs. How should I use Azure Security Center to protect my on-prem VMs? But Azure Security Center protects both Azure and hybrid workloads very easily by installing some minimal agents on your devices. They can be onboarded to provide alerting through Azure Security Center and Defender ATP. Providing the security is absolutely paramount for your servers. So if we look at Azure Security Center to detect the suspicious VM, which we think was compromised by the threat actor, we can do so through the following. So Security Center constantly analyzes your hybrid cloud workloads using advanced threat analytics and intelligence to alert you of malicious activity. So I'm going to go back and look at the security alerts from the overview dashboard so you can see the list of alerts and how they're prioritized by severity. So we can see on this screen we have a security incident description at the top and the list of alerts that are a part of this incident. So if we click on the alert, in this case, you'll want to investigate further to obtain more information. So the type of alert can vary, but you can branch into an investigation portion to help you correlate and determine the different points of entry and the different points that are involved within this particular security incident. So if you click Start Investigation, it produces an investigation map, which is a very cool graphical representation of all the entities that are connected to this security alert or incident. By clicking on an entity in the map, the information about that entity will show new entities. So you can delve and dive deeper and sort of expand to see all of the different entities that might be involved within this particular threat. If the threat is detected by Defender ATP, you can be provided with even more threat intelligence. So you'll see a little link in the top that says WDATP, and we can actually click to branch into Defender ATP to provide additional information and protection from the Defender ATP console, which we'll show you in a minute. So again, what we've showed you was a quick view into how we've basically applied integrated intelligence across all the different platforms, both on-prem and in cloud, to build sort of this unified view of the state of your users and your infrastructure. So hopefully both examples showed you how Microsoft Threat Protection addresses that challenge of securing against very sophisticated attacks. So now we can look into the automation capabilities of threat protection and how it helps to reduce time and saves money and ultimately helps enhance your security. So automation for incident response becomes a much more important part of enterprise-grade security. Automation can help you mitigate threats in real time and help reduce the time for detection and recovery and ultimately improve the efficiency, accuracy, and overall security for your org. So these are features in Office 365 that are going to be available in preview. Last we heard is preview December 2018, so they're not quite available yet, but they are making their way into Office 365 as we speak. So Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection provides a new threat intelligence dashboard that delves into what are called investigations of threats taking place within Office 365 ATP. So let's walk through one of the common vectors that attackers use to compromise identities within organizations is sending phish emails. Phish emails are very, very common. They're a way for attackers or actors to get into your organization. So this is an example of an alert where a phishing email was once sent into an organization, but it was benign. So if Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection will actually click on links and it will actually visit them to determine if they're malicious or not. So one technique that attackers use is they send emails through with links that are benign, and then they weaponize them at a later date. So threats might not be detected initially, but they get detected at a later date. So most security teams want to be alerted to trigger an investigation flow to assess the possible impact of such a detection. Going through this can take a lot of time and effort for already stretched security teams, so we want a way to automate this. So the alert that we showed you earlier, you can click on this alert and you can see the results of the automatic investigation taking place. You can see how Microsoft's already analyzed this threat indicator. They've expanded the search for similar emails that have been sent within the org, matching that content or that URL. Any users that have potentially read those emails or opened those emails, maybe users that have executed those emails and those threats are being run on particular devices. You also want to know the impact of, again, as we said, any of the devices that these users might own. This is where we can branch out and farm out investigations to Defender ATP on the endpoints. So if an email comes through and it's weaponized and then it's executed on an endpoint, we can analyze the email to determine if that threat has been used elsewhere, and we can immediately analyze all the endpoints that have possibly executed those particular threats. So the power of this automation is that it is done all of these steps that the SecOps team in your org might have needed to do manually, and it's spit out a set of recommendations that you can easily follow. This is something that might have taken days, hours, maybe even weeks to do a detailed investigative analysis within your org. Now you can do this within a matter of minutes with Microsoft's threat protection. So taking the scenario we described in the previous slide, we can see a native alert generated by Office 365 for a weaponized URL being detected. Here you can see the alert that identifies the URL that was recently weaponized as detected by Office 365 ATP through their URL detonation feature. So this detonates all URLs by visiting them, exploding them in Hyper-V and containers of varying OSs, varying browsers, varying Office products, to determine if those links have any malicious impact when they're clicked on. So Office 365 Threat Intelligence has now triggered an automated investigation and response, AIR, based on this alert, and has resolved the alert given the automatic investigation having been completed. So not only does it provide automatic investigations, but if it determines that no additional threats have been found, it can actually automatically remediate those alerts as required, which saves you the time from having to go in and do this. So if we delve into the investigation link, we bring up a summary graph we showed earlier. So this graph shows all the different entities involved in the scan, all the emails, all the users, all the devices that are part of this investigation. This really amplifies the power of automation in an investigation and response scenario, given the deep and broad sets of analysis that Office 365 Threat Intelligence can do while leveraging this power. So specifically, if you look at the example that's on the screen, 53 emails were identified as being relevant to this investigation based on sender, IP, domain, URL, other attributes. And a subset of them, 6, were identified as being phishing emails sent from an internal user within the organization. Now, internal threats are much more serious than external. We external threats are very, I would say, easier to detect. If you get an email from a user you've never seen before, you as a user generally have a little bit more understanding that this is probably something malicious, probably something I shouldn't click at. If an email comes from your coworker, that is, most users would consider that not to be a threat, but attackers are more and more frequently compromising identities and using internal mail and internal processes to, weaponize, understand how you conduct your daily business, forge emails internally within your org to help gather information and execute these threats. So these internal threats are just as much of a concern as external. So if we do a user pivot on this investigation, we've also identified anomalies for this one user, Jeff, with respect to a suspicious login and mass downloads of documents. So you may have also noticed that the same user that we showed you previously in the hash attack scenario, this is the same Jeff. So, with Microsoft 365 Threat Protection, we're now able to correlate this vast signal base across Azure ATP, Azure Active Directory, and Cloud App Security to really help you efficiently and effectively target your incident response. So as part of this automated investigation and response, you can also see we've triggered an investigation with Defender ATP into the devices that Jeff owns. So we can actually in turn identify that this malicious email-borne threat was executed on a workstation. Office 365 ATP can relay to Defender ATP that it should probably do an investigation on those endpoints, and the same detailed investigation can be kicked off on those endpoints. So last but not least, with the compromised user anomalies, and compromised device threats, Office 365 Intelligence has also taken some auto remediation actions, like blocking URLs, deleting any emails and mailboxes related to this URL, and triggered Azure Active Directory workflows to maybe do password resets or forced MFA on next login for these compromised users. This ability to take automatic actions or drive remediation actions without any manual intervention based on policy are really core elements of this automated incident response. So in summary, what would have taken a SOC team multiple hours or even days with manual investigation is now completed within a matter of minutes. So again, a key aspect of this automated incident response is a promise to sort of correlate and link and auto-resolve parts of the investigation, hence reducing the amount of time that you guys have to spend to help triage these alerts. So the correlated alerts and events are all critical part of the all-up investigation, providing a broader lens into these sort of risk indicators. So these include alerts raised from Office 365 or those from Cloud App Security and Azure Active Directory. Everything is integrated, sharing, exchanging of information. This view shows all alerts relevant to the investigation, including the alert triggering the investigation, as well as any other alerts that were correlated. So from this page, a security operations analyst may also be able to view additional details on the alerts themselves. So we can actually drill into the additional details of the alerts. So this last view shows email clusters being identified, because if you have generally one malicious email, you want to understand how those malicious emails are being clustered. Who else were they targeted at? What endpoints have executed them based on a variety of means? But given the sheer volume of mail, that can be difficult. So what Microsoft does is look at clustering these emails based on similar attributes, looking at the header, the body, the URL, the attachments, the source IPs, the sender IPs, all that information. So in this note, you'll notice that there's one cluster of 6 emails that was deemed as phishing and auto-remediated based on a deletion. So those have actually been reached into the user's mailbox and deleted. So you can very much see when one email-borne threat comes through, how those are correlated amongst these different clusters, and where did those emails end up? Did they get deleted? Did they get sent to junk? Or were they potentially delivered to somebody's mailbox? So again, this tab shows the user view of the investigation, and in this scenario, the automated incident response has identified a number of indicators of compromise, what we refer to as IOCs, and anomalies based on logins and mass downloads of files from SharePoint Online. So it's determined that Jeff, based on these alerts have come through, have also seen a mass download of files from SharePoint Online. So these additional details of the investigation are also available through these detailed views. So you can actually see every single component that is investigated in these logs, looking at email indicators for extraction and identification, on-demand detonation of malicious URLs, and all the different components that make up these sort of integrated incident responses. It's important to understand so you guys can, from a learning perspective, understand the different types of threat vectors and avenues that Microsoft's looking at to help determine if these threats are really legitimate or not. So back on the Machines tab, the current threat intelligence product that you use today, you can manually investigate and correlate email threats to the devices. And I really, really like this. When an email-borne threat comes through, potentially gets executed and ran on a device, there is this correlation and this trading of signals. If you use things like cloud-delivered protection in Windows Defender, it can basically detect a threat, immediately relay that threat to the intelligence security graph, and all endpoints across the entire planet that use cloud-delivered protection can be protected. So Microsoft can very rapidly prevent a threat from executing without having to sort of wait for definition updates to sort of be rolled out. Just as this happens, we can click on the machine tab to branch into the investigation taking place on the machine. So now this is branching to Defender ATP and the actual endpoint, and we can see what's happening on the endpoint in terms of the investigation. And if you've ever dealt with Defender ATP, these automated investigations are absolutely fantastic. They look at everything. You can actually look at the entities analyzed there. It analyzes every file, every process, every service, every driver, every IP, every persistence method, those including like the startup run keys and any of the registry keys that might pertain to auto launch of applications and things like that. So without you having to do anything, it's kicked off this automated investigation on your endpoints as well. That's going through every possible avenue for threat on these endpoints and determining if there's any additional threats that need to be remediated. You can dig into the log of threats that take place within those endpoints as well. You can see a detailed listing of everything that's been scanned, all the files that have been quarantined, and everything that's taking place with the endpoint investigation as well. So the previous slide we showed was the Office 365 investigation, and this is the endpoint investigation that's taking place. So in summary, again, automation is key. It's really, really key to help address that broad attack surface. Most CISOs will tell you that their security teams are stretched because there's way too much to cover. There's too many endpoints, too many identities. They don't have enough people with the relevant skills to tackle these. Investigations take too long. There's too much noise and alerts to drill through. Security teams just cannot keep up. So the power of automation is the ability for us to apply this sort of collective service-wide intelligence to correlate these different alerts and threats within your organization. Most importantly, automation strengthens your overall organizational security because you don't have to be present for these investigations and remediation actions to take place. So in summary, we're just going to show you basically the graph of all the threat protection products that we've talked about today and how they sort of correlate and exchange information. So we have Office 365 ATP at the front door that's looking for malware, phishing, impersonation, spoofing, detonating URLs, detonating attachments, looking for all those mail-borne threats that come through. When those threats do happen to get through and run on a device, we have Defender ATP on the endpoint, on your servers, on your workstations, looking for these threats that are being executed and potentially working through your organization. We also have Azure Identity Protection looking at all of your identities connecting to anything Azure related, Office 365, OneDrive, SharePoint, you name it. Any authentication to Azure can go through Azure Identity Protection, and that's looking for brute force accounts or stolen credentials or malicious sign-ins from anonymous IPs. So we have Identity Protection protecting the identities, Defender ATP protecting the endpoints. If those endpoints do indeed get compromised and a user attempts to query for additional accounts within your organization, steal tickets or tokens and move laterally to different workstations and different servers, we have Azure ATP designed to protect against that, designed to protect against DNS reconnaissance and brute force password attacks and all those sorts of things happening internally within your organization. Then finally, if a threat actor or an attacker attempts to connect to the cloud and attempts to steal or exfiltrate data from Cloud App Security, SharePoint Online, OneDrive, we have Cloud App Security that's protecting against all of those different cloud apps within your organization as well. So this is the whole threat protection stack as it takes place. And each one of these points is dynamically integrated and sharing of information between them. So you can get a much more holistic view of security, and you can help trace these threats with much more accuracy. And as you've seen, we're wrapping automation around these attacks and these different threats to help provide you with an automated incident response around these things. So many of you may be using what's called Office 365 E3, and you may be thinking, hey, maybe I want to branch into, some of these security features that are available. What's the easiest avenue to go through that route? Well, there's a number of different avenues to go through that route, but one of the most attractive ones that just came out in February of this year is this new Identity and Threat Protection SKU. So the list price of this SKU is $12 per user per month. You can bolt this SKU on to any existing E3 customer. So if you're currently an E3 user of Office 365, you can bolt on this SKU and get everything we showed you today for that very low cost of $12 per user per month. Obviously, going the full E5 route is a better approach. But if you're not concerned about some of the other advanced E5 features that are contained in there, such as Windows 10 Enterprise E5, or you don't need the enterprise voice functionality that comes with E5, it's very attractive to bolt on this identity and threat protection SKU to start consuming all of the services that we talked about today. And I will reiterate that the time it takes to implement these services is very, very minimal. These are all cloud-delivered protection products. You can literally work through and stand up the large majority of everything we covered in this presentation in a relatively short time frame. There's not a lot of manpower and effort required to implement these tools and technologies, but they provide such a key value in security within your organization. So again, we have additional sessions coming up. I'm doing 2 sessions at both Tech Summit in Calgary and Tech Summit in Winnipeg, as well as 3 full one-day advanced security workshops. So it's similar to what we covered today, but we're going to cover a full day's worth of activity. So we'll drive into a lot more demos and really touching and feeling the products. I'm doing those in Vancouver, Edmonton, and Toronto as well, if you are around. So we can communicate those links for registration for these events. We'll send them out to everybody. There's a waiting list on some of these events, so we're actually hosting additional ones. I'm getting the dates in the next few days to help, because there's so much interest in a lot of these sessions. So again, take action. Last session we talked about leveraging SecureScore, looking at what SecureScore means in your organization. You can do that as a good start to understand how your security posture is. You can look at cyber attack strategies with the below link as well to help you learn about what it means and what the cyber attack landscapes, how they exist and what are some emerging threats that you can stay protected against. Or contact our sales team to set up proof of concepts or trials. A lot of this stuff we can do in trials, and because the identity and threat protection SKUs are very, very low cost, you can pick up 10 or 15 of them, maybe for your IT folk or your administrative staff, and implement all of these tools just to trial them with a very, very low cost of entry point. And with that, we will wrap up. I'll leave some time if anyone has any questions on the